Welcome. In this video we're going to be going over the recently added feature of Gear Reforge and Transcend. So for this one we're going to be going over how to use it, what it does, and kind of best practices or tips for using it more efficiently. To get to it, there are two ways to get to the Gear Reforge or Transcend options. One of the ways is going to be going to a piece of gear. So for example, let's go to a piece of gear that is equipped on one of the Elunes, and whenever you select the gear, as you can see, this one that I have on my primary weapon stat from my Arslan has already been upgraded. So let's select it. When you select it, you'll see an option now down at the bottom that says Reforge. You can get to the Reforge section of this to manipulate it or to transcend it from here. This gear has already been transcended once, and just to give you a comparison about how much this added, this is on a level 80 weapon. As you can see, the standard is 4488 attack. The +1 transcendence on it is 4819, adding approximately 330 or so extra damage, which is a pretty good amount. So you can get to it, like I said, from the Reforge here. That will take you to it. Another way that you can get to it, and that's a very similar type method, is again you can do it from your bag. Also, you can go to a bag, you can select a piece of gear. When you select it, you get the Reforge option. You'll have the scrap, sell, the Reforge, or equip options. You can just go to the Reforge option. It's the same thing. You can do that from here. You cannot reforge the rings or the necklaces. The necklaces, rings do not have reforge options, as they cannot be upgraded to +12 anyway. You cannot reforge them. You can only do the primary type gears. Exclusive gears is the same thing. They have enhancements and so on, but they do not have a reforge option. At least of right now, that does not exist. So the other way to get to it is going to the menu here in the top right, and then choosing right here next to where it says exploration on and above lab, next to fusion, and under title there's the forge option. So if you go there, you'll go to this menu. Once you get here, this is what it'll look like. On the right, you'll have two options, Reforge or Transcend, and then the list of gear. By default, the list does not include any equipped gear. So to show equipped gear that are on other Elunes, you'll simply go to the settings and then select the equipped option, confirm, and then it'll show you all the gear that's equipped, denoted by the little E. So for this example, let's go ahead and go through and we'll do a Reforge, and we'll show you reforged gear, what it looks like, what happens to it, and we'll also do a Transcend. So let's go through and let's take a look at the gear. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and do equipped gear, and we'll go through and we'll find my Arslan weapon again, and we'll take a look and see about transcending it again, as I do have an extra one. So once I select it, it comes up and it brings up a menu. As you can see on this menu now, it'll show my weapon that I already have on the left. It'll have the plus, it'll have available options on the right, and it shows me what the attack will go to. It'll go from 4819 to 5205. This is an increase of just less than 400, so this is pretty good. This will make it go from +13 to +14. So once I select the weapon that I want to use for the Transcend, then I select the material. You'll now get the option down here to transcend it. You'll need 15 of these T.Orbs here, and then on this case 95,000 gold. So you can see the bonus stats that I have on this gear, and after transcending it, you get a +1 to a random stat. In the case that I did on this one already to +13, the random stat that got improved was the physical defense on this weapon, which added a +130 to the stat. that gives me more physical defense. One of the stats will be increased when you do this. So in the case of this one, I'll either get attack, crit, or crit power, or physical defense. So one of the stats will get increased so that it'll have a stronger stat for those substats. So for doing Transcend gear, a best practice type thing that you would want to do is only transcend the gear that has good substats that you already want, that you like, and that you want to be upgraded. If you have one that, say, does not have very good substats on it, but you want to make the gear stronger, then I would suggest keep rolling other gear and collecting other gear until you get one that is good. Another option that you have, and that we'll go over before we do this, just to give you an idea, is the Reforge option. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Reforge option, and I'll show you an example of a gear that you wouldn't want to do. So let's go take a look here and see what we have. Which is it? Okay, so for this one, this gear here, this is on a support. This is on a support helm or crown. It has physical defense, which is good as the main stat, and then it has the 4 substats: weaken resist twice, nature resist, and accuracy. Typically you're going to want other substats here besides these. Resistances are not bad, but depending on what you're wanting this Elune to do, the resistances might or might not be that helpful. So in this case, the double weaken resist, the nature resist, and the accuracy are not really ideal for this. So for this one, this would be something that you could, change if it was only one stat that you wanted different. As you can only change one stat, and after you change that one stat, you cannot change any others. You can continuously re-roll that one stat with the Reforge option, but once one stat is changed, that is the only slot that can now change. Whatever the new stat is, it still can be the only one. So to give you an idea of this, I believe I did re-roll one on a piece of gear. Let me see if I can find the one that I did that on. Okay, the Arzlan weapon is one that I did it on too, to test with. So the original stat that was here, I believe, was a resistance stat. So I selected it before I did the Transcend. I selected the resist stat and went ahead and selected it, and then did the Reforge option. As you can tell, it takes one of these flaming hammer materials to reforge. Now, if you continuously re-rolling it, the amount of hammers needed, these flaming hammers needed to reforge, will start to increase. It'll start to go up to 2 and then more as you keep re-rolling that stat for the perfect one that you're looking for. So if you're looking for just, more speed on something and you just don't get speed, the more you keep trying for it, the more hammers it'll start costing as you continuously keep re-rolling. But for this one, the other stats that I had on there, attack, physical defense, crit power, all good stats. The only one that was just kind of off was the resistance stat, which I believe was just a physical resistance stat, which wasn't too important for me for this one. I wanted him to have more damage in some way. So I went ahead and selected that one by checking the tick box next to it here, and then I selected the Reforge, and when I re-rolled it, I got crit. So I stopped with that because that was perfect, so good. Other good stats would have been speed or attack, or even physical defense isn't bad because you do face a lot of physical damage type Elunes, so extra physical defense doesn't hurt. But this way, all of the stats on there were good. So when I did do the Transcendence, whichever one got randomly increased was going to be a good stat. So if you're going to start transcending a gear and it doesn't have perfect stats, you're going to want to reforge off anything first, any stat that you're going to want to change. Because if you don't do that and then you go and transcend the gear, you have the chance of it increasing the stat that you didn't like. So reforge the gear first, to get all this, to make sure it's a gear that has all good stats on it. So don't waste your time to do gear that doesn't have good stats. Alright, well that was weird. It just kind of did this little funky text thing. So anyway, back into here. Okay, so for example, if I was going to reforge a gear, I would look for one that has good stats, except for maybe one that's not too good. So this one is not ideal. This one has crit, physical defense, attack speed. Basically, all of these stats are good. Don't need to change anything. I wouldn't want to change any of these. So I could transcend it if I have another one. This one, crit power, physical defense, curse resistance. I would want to change more than one, so I wouldn't do this one. This one, attack speed, physical defense, crit power, crit. All pretty good stats. If I was going to change any on this one, since this is a healer one, I would probably change the crit power one. But even in that case, I don't think it's worth it. I think it's fine like this. Here is this one, the dagger, DPS dagger. If I was going to change one, depending on which Elune I'm using it on, I would probably change the crit resist, but it does have like the accuracy I might not need, the evasion I might not need, so it's not worth it. Let's see, the tank shield. This one has attack speed, physical resist, crit. The tank doesn't necessarily need the attack, but it's not bad. But as you can see on this one, I've already reforged it, so I got a crit stat on it, so I went ahead and stayed with that one, because the other stat that I believe I had here was another resistance stat. I think it was like a spell resist or something stat. So I re-rolled it and I got crit, so I was happy with the crit, because crit's always good. It just allows you to do extra damage, so I went ahead and kept that one. As you can see, like on this one, this healer shoes, the magic defense, crit power, weaken resist, accuracy. There's too many of these stats that I don't really want, so I wouldn't want to transcend this gear. This hat, the same thing, crit power, curse resist on a support hat. Not necessarily something I need. The accuracy, probably not something I'm gonna need, so I wouldn't want to do it. This one, this is a lot of tankiness, so it's HP, magic defense, physical defense. I would probably like to keep this one anyway, even though it's on a debuffer. It could be used on a debuffer that is just that you want to be tanky to different things, so you could build a really tanky type debuffer instead and just have it act as a tank. So like this type of weapon would be good on like a Charlotte, because a Charlotte is a tank anyway. So this type of weapon would be perfect on a Charlotte. She's considered a debuffer class, but she is more of a tank role. So this type of stats where it's HP and then magic and physical defense would be perfect on a Charlotte. So for like this weapon would be a great Charlotte weapon. I wouldn't need to change anything. This one, support crown, attack speed, crit resist, spell resist. The attack and the attack speed aren't too bad, because attacks can help the supports, because a lot of their skills and buffs are usually based on their attack. Attack speed's always good. The crit resist and spell resist, less useful, but that's two of them that I don't really want. So if I was to reforge this, I might get one stat that I like, but I'm still stuck with one that I don't, and when I transcend, that could be the one that gets re-rolled into, so I would prefer probably not to do that. Healer had this one to resist 2 defenses. Because of that, I probably wouldn't want to do this, because it's going to be at least 2 stats that I'm not going to want. Same thing here, crit resist, evasion, accuracy, magic defense. I don't necessarily need the accuracy on a healer. You know, most healers are not going to need that accuracy, so it doesn't really matter. The only ones that kind of do need the accuracy that are healer classes would be something like an Elucia, where you want to be able to land those strips into freeze, or you want to, so the sleep is guaranteed, so that one you don't have to worry about. But the skill, the ultimate skill on her, you do need accuracy to be able to land it. So for her, the accuracy is good. The evasion's not so good, but the magic defense is pretty good too. But the crit resist, evasion, not as strong. This one, this is a physical defense. This one has magic defense, which is good, attack, which is good, crit resist, weaken resist. Again, two stats that you don't necessarily need. If I was going to do this one, I would probably do the crit resist, as the weaken resist is pretty nice to have. Going over some other ones. This one, again, two resistances that you don't really want. The attack speed and the magic defense are good, but the nature and weaken resist, not necessarily stats you'd want to keep, depending on what your role is for this one. So I probably wouldn't want that one. This one, we already saw. This one, not something I would want to keep. Going into some of the boots and stuff, basically what I'm doing when I'm looking through this, if I'm going to transcend the gear, then I want to find one that's good. If I don't have one that's good, like this one, triple spell resist and attack, like, great, lots of spell resist. So this one's really immune to spell resist, and then it has the one good attack stat, but really good against spell resist. So this one is probably not one I would want to transcend. I would probably use this as a transcend food. This one here for the DPS sword here, attack speed good, accuracy usually good, crit resist, weaken resist not so much. This one, this is a good tank weapon, magic defense, physical defense, physical defense. So for this one, this would be a good candidate for a Reforge and Transcendence, because you could reforge off the weaken resist. So if I selected it, I just put the select next to it and then choose the reforge. So if I was going to do it, I could do this one and then, you know, go for something that's better by doing that. So let's go ahead and try to take a look and see what happens. So we'll do this one. I have the good magic defense, physical to physical, the weaken resist. So let's see what happens if I change the weaken resist and go for something else. So we'll tick it, and then we'll go to the reforge down here in the bottom right. And as you can see, these are all, the other three are all, you don't have anything in their boxes, and I get to pick because I haven't done it yet. But once it's done, these will all come with a lock icon in it, which means you can no longer do those, you can only do this one. So I did that, and now I have curse resist on it. So if I wanted to change it, I could do it again. I would need another hammer. I don't have any more at the moment, so that's why it's showing as red. So I can still continue working on this one, but as you can see now, that's the one that's selected by default. It'll always be the selected one, and then the other stats are all locked, which means they can't change. So as I don't have the ideal stat yet, or one that I really want for that slot, I wouldn't want to transcend this here yet until I keep re-rolling until I get that last one that I want. So let's go ahead and go to now, we'll go ahead and do a transcend. So we're going to go ahead and go to the transcend section here. Let's go ahead and find that Arzon weapon, and we'll transcend it up again. So here's the weapon. I selected it. This one has stats that I want, all the stats I wanted on this one. That's why I went ahead and went with it and didn't change anything. So I selected it. Now I'm going to go ahead and select the material. It doesn't have to be max. I was just re-rolling the gear to see if it had good stats, and that's something you're going to want to do with any gear. You're not going to want to take a gear that you haven't re-rolled anyway as food, because it might roll really nicely. So you want to go ahead and roll it out to see how it ends up, because if it ends up as a very good stat type item, then you might want to keep that one instead. So always re-roll the stuff before you use it as food. Just a good rule of thumb type thing. You might get something really good. So always re-roll them. But in this case, this one was pretty bad, so no big deal. I'll use it as food. So when I do it, it's going to show that it's going to go from 13 plus the food goes up to 14. This is the attack that gets bumped up, and then a random bonus stat will get bumped up. So let's go ahead and do the transcend. As you can see, it uses 15. I know to go from 12 to 13 it also uses 15, so from 13 to 14 it uses 15. So we'll be able to see if it goes up after this. Okay, so bumping up that one, I got my crit power increased by plus 100 as an extra one. So for this one now, I got that. I don't know if it's going to go up past that or what it's going to go up to. Let me go back and select it. But as you can see, the physical defense and crit power now are both at +1, giving me extra stats. So I got an extra 130 PDEF now on this one and an extra 100 crit power. So their base stats are 399, 265. So let's go take a look at them on the Arslan anyway. And when we go take a look at the gear, you can see that's what they're up to now. So without that increased stat, it would be minus 130 here, minus 100 here. So my PDEF would be 269 instead, but the bonus got an extra 130. The crit power would be 165, but with the bonus I'm at 265. So this makes it, you know, pretty good. And with the attack bonus on here, I get a pretty good attack stat, so that's an extra 613 added onto this attack anyway. So now it's at 14. It's at a nice 5205, which is good. So now it's up to a pretty high attack, making him even stronger as an attacker, as he just increased by, it was pretty close to 400 attack. So he went, his attack was, I believe, 30,600 and something, 670-ish or something, and now it's up to 31,034, so his attack went up by quite a bit. So he's getting close to 70k CP. So haven't been able to get that title at 80k single Elune yet, but he is probably going to be the first, because he's the one that I have the most CP on so far. But anyway, as you can see, that it really does, the Transcendent stuff does really help the gear. You're just going to want to be careful on which ones you do. Like I said, look for the gear that has the stats you like. If you don't have any of this high level gear yet or anything, the level 80 gear, the 85 gear or something, and you can still work on the other gear, the lower gear, but I wouldn't put too much into it, because it's not typically going to be gear you're going to be using on that Elune all the time. You're going to eventually want to move to the level 80 gear, the level 85 gear. So, but for some stuff you probably will keep using, and that won't be bad. Sometimes, like some of the shields here for the HP, you might want to keep using, because you might have, say, a healer or a support that can benefit from the HP early on. Maybe it's not tanky enough, so you want to get it on HP. So you want to get it on really high HP. You can go with this type of gear and get it up HP, and then you can improve this gear to make it even better too. So, like for example, if I wanted to do this one, I could pick it, and then I could go to, we'll go ahead and go to Transcend, and let's go ahead and find one of those shields or something. So let's just go to a shield here, and then I'll pick one from the inventory. As you can see, bumping it up, I'll gain about 200 HP on it. So like for this gear, this wouldn't be a bad one to increase, because it's attack speed, attack, physical defense, physical defense. So this wouldn't be a bad one to do. And as you can see, this is a lower grade of gear, so it only takes 9 of those T.Orbs to upgrade. So if I wanted to upgrade this one, I could upgrade it. I would have to unlock it first, the gear, but then I would be able to upgrade it, and I would get a bonus stat upgrade too. But this one wouldn't be a bad one to do, as it would increase my attack speed stat, one of the PDEF stats, or the attack. So this would be a pretty good gear to do, as this gear is already pretty good and has all the stats that has good force stats on it. So I wouldn't have to worry about reforging anything first. And it only takes 9 of the orbs to transcend this gear. This is a level 75 gear. If we clear it off, let's see. We'll go find a level 70 legend gear and take a look and see what it costs. Okay, so here's a level 70 gear. We'll select that, and as you can see, it's still 9. So this grade of gear, 70, 75, is going to be 9 T.Orbs to do, Transcendence Orbs or T.Orbs to do it. So as this one you can see gets just less than 200 also, so about 180 or so extra HP on it, which isn't too bad. So it does increase it, does help it, makes it a little bit stronger. But it can be worth it for some of these, for some of the gear, like I said, especially like the shields and stuff. You can get some pretty good extra stats off of it, and they can still be helpful. But for the most part, you're probably going to want to focus on just doing the level 80 or 85 type gear, as that's going to be the stronger gear anyway, and that's where you're going to want to use your resources on, and not so much on the other weaker legendary gear. So again, try to focus on stuff that's good. If you're going to be doing Transcend, look for gear that has stats that are all good. If it has one that's off, reforge that one, then do the Transcendence. So like I said, like on this gear, I would, if I had more, I would start doing Transcendence on it. But as I only have the one offhand now for this gear slot, I would probably keep any additionals that I get and equip them on other debuffers, just so they can get set bonuses, they can get higher attack stuff. So I wouldn't focus on just like one Elune making it really well. I would kind of want to round off the rest of my box so that they all have good stats initially. Then I would start working on Gear Transcendence and Reforge. So for a lot of early game and even mid game players, you're probably not going to want to do too much of this. The reason I did the DPS one is because I've had so many of these DPS extra weapons that rerolled bad, so I didn't need them. I don't use them. All of my DPSs, including all my epics and stuff, already have weapons equipped, DPS weapons equipped, so I didn't need any more, and I still had extras. So for some reason, I've been collecting a lot of them. I don't know why or how, but I just keep those the most. So I had extras, so I had no problem getting rid of a couple of them to improve one of them that I had already. Anyway, that's going to be it for this one. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below and I'll answer them as soon as I can. Thank you.